The Gilfillan estate is located in Paxton Township, 4 miles from Morgan and 8 miles from Redwood Falls on Highway 67. The construction of this complex of buildings was started in 1885 by Charles Duncan Gilfillan. In 1902, at the death of C.D. Gilfillan, his son C.O. Gilfillan took charge of the farm. This is the main house looking north from the highway. It is beautifully situated on a tableland from which both sunrise and sunset were clearly visible. The house is a frame house with 2 large porches. The office where Mr. Gilfillan conducted his business is connected to the main house by an arbor. The main house and office, water tower, ice house, horse barn, and 1 cattle barn are all that remain of the original complex of buildings built by C.D. Gilfillan. The caretaker's house is to the east of the main dwelling. Lawrence Harder and his wife Kathy live there at present. This is the Morgan Community Building. It was built in 1938 by Mr. C.O. Gilfillan in honor of his father, C.D. Gilfillan. C.D. had once remarked to his son that he harbored a very warm spot in his heart for the town of Morgan, and it gave C.O. great pleasure to be able to carry out, in honor of his father and for his own pleasure, the building of the community building and bandstand. He also donated 160 acres of land to be used for the care of this facility. It houses the library, police and city offices, restrooms, and a meeting room. There is also a museum in the basement with some of Mr. Gilfillan's hunting trophies and other artifacts. Gilwood Haven in Redwood Falls was also built in honor of C.O.'s father. It was built in 1940 to fulfill a need that Mr. Gilfillan thought was long evident. A place was needed where women could come to rest and feed their babies during shopping trips. It also has a meeting room and restrooms. It is located on Mill Street and designed by the same architect who did the Morgan building. It is colonial style with red brick and slate shingles. The library at Wabasso was built in honor of C.O. Gilfillan's mother, Fanny. Building was started in March of 1942 despite the war, and by November it was open to the public. It has the same architectural design as the other buildings. It houses the library and meeting rooms. 80 acres of land were set aside to support this facility. Again, Mr. Gilfillan showed concern for another community, the village of Clements in Three Lakes Township. He had an attractive brick building constructed, which was completed in 1949. It contained space for a women's lounge, meeting room, and a garage for the fire engine, which up until then had been kept in a residence garage, and the council had met at the lumber company or at the bank. In 1960, Mr. Gilfillan became interested in another project, a nursing home and home for the aged in Morgan. He was very generous to this facility, and it was named Gilmore Manor in honor of the Gilfillans. The people of Redwood County have been most fortunate to have had such a generous benefactor.
Elizabeth Allen Gilfillan. And today is August the 7th, 1987.
And we're here with you today to have a tour of your very lovely home, and I know you have some articles here that you'd like to tell us about. You told me earlier that you have a chair over here that has a very delightful history. Would you like to go over there and tell us something about this chair, Mrs. Gilfillan?
I certainly would. Yeah. My brother William Allen was the manager here back in the 1930s, and he died after an operation for appendicitis with a blood clot. He had he had 4 children, but he had one boy that after he lost his father, he wanted a dog so badly. And Mr. Gilfillan thought he should have a dog. So he found out, looking at the paper, the kind of a dog that he wanted was for sale in St. Paul, Minnesota. So we went down to St. Paul and we hunted up the address of the man that had the kennel and wanted to sell the dog. When we got there, it was, see, my brother died in November, and this was in the month of December, and when we found the place where the man had the kennel, in the backyard there was a great big just garbage that was thrown out. You know, the ashes from the furnace. You know how people, when they had the furnaces, they carried the ashes out and made a pile with them. And this chair was thrown out on top of the ashes. You know, Mr. Gilfillan bought the dog that he was there. And when I saw this chair, my mother had a bed that had all this kind of furniture on it. And I thought the chair looked so nice, but the coils were all out of it. The upholstery was all gone. It was just a wreck, you know. So I said to him after we had the dog, I said, "Will you sell me that chair?" And he said, "Lady, do you want a chair like that?" And then I told him about that. I saw the wood and I thought it was a nice chair, and it was a rocker. And he said, "Well, what do you want to give me for it?" And I said, "Well, how would $5 be?" $5, he said. You see, this was during the Depression time, and he thought that was an awful lot to give to a wrecked chair that he had thrown out. But I could see they really needed, they were poor people. So he said $5, and he certainly would take that for the chair. "And I would like to give you this table to remember us by." And that's how we got this table. But you see, I've lived in this house 65 years, so that's a long time.
Where is the watch over there?
The second shelf here. Can you see it? Put a couple of angels by it.
And whose watch is that again?
C.D. Gilfillan's.
How old is that watch?
Well, he died in 1902, so he had it before that time.
What about the other articles on that shelf, Mrs. Gilfillan?
practically everything on this table or on this whatnot has been given to me at times. Birthday presents, Christmas presents, just a gift. New York.
New York.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
New
A
York.
Persian rug?
It's a Persian rug. They're all Persian
They're all
rugs.
Persian
But
rugs.
that one in there, in the library,
Uh-huh.
Mr. Gilfillan C.O.
Okay.
So
Okay.
growing up on that rug, you know how old that all over the house.
Okay. Tell them about the rug that Mr. Gilfillan grew up on. It's over 92 years old. And you,
Well, it probably is 100 years old.
okay.
Yeah,
So
I don't know.
his
He-
father,
His father and mother had it in their home
their home.
in St. Paul.
Paul.
Yeah,
So most of
And-
your items in the home came from family
from family or
and close
Relatives.
relatives and friends.
and friends.
Okay.
Well, I don't know where the lamp came from. That was his sister had that lamp.
It
That was in
matches.
her home.
Yes, it matches.
Well, yeah, it is. It's a good place for us. But the table and the man that made this is Anne and this is Charles. It's named. It's in mosaic.
That was handmade for you?
Well, he had the table and then he just put our names on it there. He had it made. And after he put our names on, we bought it. Here.
Which one is which?
This is Anne, this is Charles. When we went on a hunting trip up into Canada,
Okay.
um,
Piece by piece.
Yes,
Year
yeah.
after year.
yes, it took me 2 or 3 years to do it. But I just, you just make the ring and then put it together. It's called Swedish popcorn. Swedish popcorn spread.
Okay.
That's my relatives on my 90th birthday.
And that's your family
Yes.
on your 90th birthday.
Uh-huh.
And that's all out in the front of your house right here?
No, it was out in the Presbyterian Church in Redwood Falls.
I see.
Uh-huh. My husband's brother, Frederick, his name was, Frederick, sent this to us from Italy. It really was made in England though, but he picked it up in Italy. He thought our house deserved a clock, and he gave it to us for a wedding present. So
Does it work?
it was 100 years old at that time, and now we've been married. It was 1920. Subtract that from
Okay.
87. It's much older. We lived out here. She always lived in St. Paul. She'd come out here to visit in the summertime,
Mm-hmm.
but she never lived out here. He did, though. He lived a lot. He would stay, but go back into his home
And he was the original, he purchased the original land,
yeah.
the house, and
He had the house built.
had the house built.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
About when was the house built, did you say?
In 1882.
1882.
Mm-hmm.
This was still pretty much of a wilderness in that time, wasn't
Yeah. He bought 10,000 acres and there was nothing on it but just prairie land.
it? And
Then he built the buildings, set up the farms.
yeah, and then he set up the individual farms
Yeah.
from that point on to what is we see here today.
With the help of his son. Through. Mr. Gilfillan said that with the first money he earned when he came to the farm here, first money, he bought this bed and dresser. So, you know how old it is.
And the
It's
bedspread?
solid. Well, the bedspread has a history. Do you want to hear it?
Of course.
You see how it's made? It was made in China. See, handmade in China. There was a lady over at Tracy, Minnesota. Her boy got shot in the eye with a BB gun. And she came over with the boy, and she said, my doctor says if I can get my boy to Rochester, he might be able to save his eye. And she said, somebody told me that you help people go to Rochester, and would you see that I could get my boy there? And she said, I've brought this spread with me. She said, my sister is a missionary in China, and she sent it to me for Christmas. But she said, we live out in the country in a little old farmhouse. She said, and I really don't have you know, can do the spread justice to keep it. And she said, I'd like to give it to you if you can get my boy to Rochester. And Mr. Gilfillan said, lady, he said, you keep your spread. I'll get your boy to Rochester. And then she came to me, and by that time the tears were coming. And I said to her, she said to me, please take the spread. She said, it looks so nice in your house, and it doesn't do justice to my house. She said, it doesn't belong there. So please take the spread. And I knew just how she felt. I said, okay, I will, and I'll use it, I told her. And I said, and now this is the bathroom.
Different, yeah.
And this is the bathroom. It has a sit tub. You can walk in. It's here. This was a bedroom too, but there was so much in the house that was all over. See what I did to it.
This must be a collection of trip items.
It's just collections of everything that my husband, come on in. This rug we bought down in Cusco, Peru, South America. This caribou head was shot in Alaska. Antelope in Wyoming. Sheep. Come on in, you can come see a little better. Just trophies that was all over the house. I kind of collected them and put them all in one room. And every place, see, I traveled around the world, and every country we went into, I bought a doll. So I had a doll collection, these dolls that I have in that thing. Here's, you remember this?
Do you remember what
That's
your
redwood.
Do you remember what your number was?
Short and long was Redwood Falls, if you wanted to get somebody. You're right. When the telephone man put in the new one down there, he said, I'll bet you're glad to get rid of that old one. And I said, I'm not going to get rid of it. I said, my husband told me he bought that. He paid for these things. And I said, I'm going to keep those. I said, told him I had room that I could put it in. I just wanted to keep it for keepsake. You should have, after I came back from, you should have attended one of the lectures I gave.
You used to give lectures on your
Yes.
trips. I read that in the book. Did,
Yeah.
How did you work quite a bit with the people when the book was written? Did you put a lot of time in as a?
This Mr. Jarko that wrote the book, I just tried to answer all the questions he asked.
And did he spend that time out here while he was writing the book or getting his background information?
He'd call me on the telephone quite often, and he did come out a few times.
Did part of the history of the Gilfillan farms had been that they were very diversified? They would have milk cows. They would not be just row crop type farming. They did many different types of, were very self-sufficient from that point. They were not all grain farmers, or they covered a lot of different aspects within the farming.
That's right. Wonderful heirloom silverware that the family had stolen. I lost all that. Never got it back or know what happened to it.
Or at one time?
Well, they were all numbered, and the last one was 42. Is Lawrence there?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
43.
42 was the highest number, wasn't it?
43.
43.
43? Must have been that many farms because they were numbered. 320, some 240. They weren't all the same size.
The story always goes about, as I recall, you could always tell a Gilfillan farm by the appearance of it because it was very well kept. The buildings were painted.
Yeah. Well, that was his idea, to keep the place looking nice, keep everything. Oh.
This driveway leads us to the Gilfillan estate with its spacious lawns, big house, and building complex. The picture taken in 1956 shows the large elm trees that lined the main driveway. They are no longer there, having succumbed to Dutch elm disease and replaced by green ash. These flower gardens were on the west side of the main house in 1956. There was an assortment of flowers: roses, peonies, zinnias, marigolds, and petunias. A hired gardener cared for the gardens at that time, but after the death of Mr. Gilfillan in 1962, they were planted to lawn. Mr. Gilfillan took daily walks around his property. He carried a folding stool with him so he could rest at intervals. He was 84 years old when these pictures were taken. C.O. and his wife Anne were married 43 years. She was the former Anna Ellen. They were married in the house here at the estate in 1920. In the background is the arbor that connects the house and office. Anne Gilfillan and her sister-in-law Jeannie Gilfillan in front of the main house. Jeannie was the wife of C.O.'s brother Fritz. They lived in South America and Switzerland, but she loved to visit the farm. This is the Gilfillan elevator in 1956. It was across the highway to the south of the farm site. This picture shows firefighters containing a blaze and saving the structure. At one time, there was also a railroad depot on the south side of the road, and the train traveling between Redwood Falls and Morgan made daily stops. This is the farm site looking west, and another view of the main house. Anne Gilfillan dressed very fashionable. This picture had no information such as date or what the occasion might be. C.O. conducted all the farm business from his office. The office had a large safe, a meeting room, and main business office. There was also an alcove with heavy curtains where Mr. Gilfillan took his naps. The calendar on the wall reads July 1959. The gate post on the main entrance to the estate has a plaque that reads, "Only that becomes real or helpful to any man that has cost him the sweat of his brow, the effort of the brain, or the anguish of his soul." Anne and C.O. in the front yard with the house in the background. This picture was taken in 1959.